Welcome back to Book Time with Ryan. I am Ryan, and these are my books. This is a book haul. I'm going to move some of these books just so I can see you, and then I'll talk about them. That's better, and I get to wear my glasses tonight. I guess you can kind of see the circle light in them. I will lose them then, because it looks a little... That looks a little creepy if I do it like that. Alright, I'll get rid of them. So I have a book haul, and I guess some background on this. A year ago, a little over a year ago, April 20th, I bought a fairly expensive book, and I had a deal with my wife that if she let me get the book, that I would not buy a book for a year. Unfortunately, we had a pandemic, so it was a very horrible year to decide not to buy a book, and my wife was very flexible with that, so I was able to buy some books. But this is mostly after the book buying freeze ended. So some of these I'll go through really quickly. Some of them I've already read. Most of them I haven't. And I will show you the most beautiful book I have ever seen in my entire life. Then we'll talk about a little kid book. And then I will go over the book that I finally finished after a week and a half or 2 weeks. Because I'm slow. Maybe a week. And that is House of Leaves. And I'm not going to do the typical summary. I'll tell you what I thought of it, but I more want to discuss what I think. So I'm going to do that completely last. It's going to be a spoiler, so if you don't want to hear about House of Leaves, then stop listening after the little kid book time. Alright, so here's what I got. We live in Virginia. We live close to a very historic Civil War site, so decided we should probably learn a little bit more about Civil War stuff. So I got this book about Civil War. It's a traveler's guide for Civil War sites, and that is because my wife wants to do an RV vacation. So I also got RV vacation for idiots, idiot guides to RV vacations. And our idea was that we would use an RV to travel along some of the battlegrounds of the Civil War. Probably starting in Gettysburg and then heading south. And then because I haven't really read a lot about the Civil War since I was in high school, here is the number one recommended book on the Civil War. I haven't started it yet. Also, it came damaged, which kind of sucks, but that's okay. Hopefully that was an important page. Then, I keep seeing stuff about Dark Matter. So I bought Dark Matter. This is paperback, obviously. I thought Dark Matter was new because everyone's been talking about it. So I went to Barnes & Noble and bought it with a gift card that my dad found in his, next to his bed. He also had a gift card from Borders, so that shows you how old these gift cards were. But it still worked, so I used that to buy Dark Matter, and then I acted like it was a new book, and they said it was 3 years old, so I felt stupid. But I'm looking forward to that. It has a cool, kind of trippy cover that's hard to appreciate how trippy it is on video. Then I got the Song of Cali. Dark Matter was a book 2 recommendation. Song of, I think Cali. I love Dan Simmons. I love every single thing I've read of Dan Simmons, and I haven't read this. So I went basically an entire day looking for reviews on Carry On Comfort, one of my very favorite books, and then Hyperion, and then Mayan. That's how I say it. I don't know if that's the correct pronunciation. But I kept seeing this book also recommended, and I've never read it, so I bought it. And I look forward to it. House of Leaves. This was recommended by a few people, but I saw it on Caroline Johnson's channel. So I read it. I have some opinions. I liked it. But I also have some theories, and I will talk about that later. So I'm going to put that over here. I really like Don Winslow. And my dad recommended this. It is a collection of short stories from Don Winslow. I like a lot of other stuff Don Winslow does. So I've heard really good things about this book. So that's going to be on my list at some point. But it's just a number of short stories. I don't think they're all connected in any way. Someday I will read that. Agent M. This is the lives and spies of MI5's Maxwell Knight. If you've read 007 or you've watched any of the movies, there's always a character named M. That character is based off of this guy, Maxwell Knight, which is a really cool name for a spy. He worked for MI5 in the UK. And that's what M is based off of. Also, there are some John le Carré characters that are based off of M too. The cool thing is, after he retired, he was really into animals. So he wrote a number of things about keeping exotic pets. And so I found a copy of Keeping, A Cuckoo in the House. It's about keeping cuckoo birds in your house. And he signed it. So I have that book. And that got me interested in Maxwell Knight. Also, I read the biography of John le Carré after he died, and there was some stuff in there about Maxwell Knight, so that just got me interested. So once the buying freeze was over, I bought this book, and I will read it at some point. I talked about in, I think, episode number 5, Edwin Sutherland's White Collar Crime. Through the process of researching that book and digging around for the specific copy, which is right there, that I have, I met and started exchanging emails with a few professors, including David Fredericks, and he wrote a book about Edwin Sutherland called Edwin Sutherland. So I already read that. I really enjoyed it. It gave me a lot more understanding of Edwin Sutherland's background. I wish I would have read that before I was contacting all these professors, because I would have felt like I knew a little more going into it. I also got a book that's a little bit older. It's a collection of Edwin Sutherland's papers called Edwin H. Sutherland on Allies and Crime, and it was edited and introduced by Carl Schulzer, who owned that book right there, too. His name's on the inside of that. And sticking with the Edwin Sutherland theme, this is one of his earlier works. He basically interviewed and then composed a book of a professional thief named Chick Conwell. It was actually Broadway Jones, a professional criminal. And I've heard really good things about this. It's actually marked up, which is interesting. But I've heard really good things about this, so I'm excited to eventually read it. It actually says the cover was done by Sue Allen. So somebody actually put thought into this cover. I don't get that. This seems like if I did this, I probably would just pass on the credit. But I don't know if there's symbolism there. It doesn't seem like there's much going on there. So that's called The Professional Thief by a Professional Thief. And then finally, White Collar Crime and Corporate. White Collar and Corporate Crime by Gilbert Geis. Gil Geis was an authority on white collar crime, and also knew a lot about Edwin Sutherland, so I've heard this is a great book. He's Canadian too, so if there are any Canadians watching, congratulations. But wait, I think he's Canadian. He may not be Canadian. I may be thinking of somebody else. Now I don't know, and I wish I would have said that, but because I'm not editing these videos, I'm just going to have to live with it. Alright, next one. Some business books. Those were kind of business anyway. The Match King. This is about Ivor Kruger, the Match King, who eventually killed himself in, I guess, 1932. And I don't know how he killed himself, but he was involved with giant fraud, hundreds of millions of dollars in fraud all over the world, especially Europe. And when it caught up to him, he killed himself. So, Ivor Kruger, the Match King. Next, this was recommended by Judy Burns, one of my old coworkers. Thank you, Judy, if you have subscribed. You said you were going to, but I didn't see any change in my subscriber numbers, so I don't know if you did. If you didn't, I'm sad now. Judy recommended this. The Hour of Fate. Theodore Roosevelt, J.P. Morgan, and the Battle to Transform American Capitalism. I believe the author is a Bloomberg reporter. I don't know what time this... Ooh, I think you can get 50% off a cookie at Barnes & Noble. Oh, no. 50% off a second cookie. I'm going to throw that away. I don't think I've ever done anything with that. So I'm excited to read this. I've heard it's good. That is Morgan, and there is Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt. Next, I've read this already. It's about the flash crash from 2010. A huge dip in the market for, 30 minutes or an hour. It's before I was really following it. I already read it. I enjoyed it. It was a lot of interesting stuff. Throwback to 2010 when a lot of other stuff was going on. I liked it. I think this is one of the... I bought this with birthday or Christmas money. And I also bought this with the same gift card at the same time from my sister and brother-in-law. So thank you, Cinnamon and Mark. I've already talked about this book. This was good. There you go. Sorry, I should probably say it there. Flash Crash, Big Dirty Money. I guess I should read Flash Crash, a trading savant, a global manhunt, and the most mysterious market crash in history. Alrighty. Now, I just finished this one a little bit ago. It's called Lying for Money. How legendary frauds reveal the workings of the world. It's very hard to read that when you wear glasses and you don't have them on. I really enjoy this. The author, Dan Davies, is on Twitter, and he is responsive, which is cool. And he used to work at the Bank of England, and then he was at some private sector stuff. So he's got some interesting background. I really liked it. It's pretty wide ranging on what it hits, what it covers, and it's really about white collar crime, and it's pretty funny too. So I recommend this. This is an enjoyable book, and it was a complete impulse buy. All right, now for the most beautiful book I have ever seen. I got this. This arrived today. It's 16 pounds. It's from Taschen. Printed in Milan. I wish the table was a little bit taller. Maybe I can turn that down a little bit. There we go. That didn't really do a whole lot, did it? All right, so this is a book about libraries. It's beautiful. It's huge. And the pictures, I don't know how I'm going to do this without possibly destroying my book, or... It's like library porn. Like, it's just, if you like books, then this is just, you could just look at this all day long. It's huge. Let's see if I can find a really cool picture. That's a pretty cool picture. So this is like what you get. It's huge, it has really nice pictures. It probably has the most beautiful cover I've ever seen. It's just more library scene stuff. The back is the same way. It's so big that I have to put it horizontal on my bookshelf. And I love it. And it's huge and cool. Alright. Little kid stuff. My wife, I've said this before, go Nashville Predators. I haven't said that, but go Predators. I've said it before, my wife is from Uruguay originally. She's a U.S. citizen now, but she was born in Uruguay and moved here when she was 12. And she speaks Spanish and English, and I speak English, and I used to take German in high school. And I understand curse words in Spanish. So, we are teaching our daughter, our 3-year-old daughter, almost 3-year-old daughter, she turns 3 next week. We're teaching her, or Diane, my wife, is teaching her how to speak Spanish. So she speaks to Noelia in Spanish a lot. I got this book at a book fair. It's about Frida Kahlo. And it says, Frida Kahlo and her animalitos. Which is cool. It's English. It's signed by the artist. He was at the book fair. And it got some award. I'm really bad at moving this stuff in front of the camera. It got some award. But, because we want to teach her Spanish, we also got the Spanish version. And there it is in Spanish. English. Spanish. And he also signed it in Spanish. Our daughter's name's Noelia. And English. The exact same thing, but in English. This is the one I can read. The only time it really gets a little confusing is Noelia will sometimes ask me if I can read something, and I can't. Because I can't read Spanish. So she'll be like, oh, read this. And I'm like, I can't do that. But at least with this book, I have the option of picking up the English if she pulls up the Spanish one. So that's cool. It's all the same stuff. But if you have a kid, if you ever have a kid, it's really nice for them to get a little exposure to other cultures and other languages. In this case, Mexican culture, Spanish is her mother's first language, so that makes sense. All right, that's it. Now, I'm going to talk about Leaves of... That's not what it's called. It's called House of Leaves. Here it is. So, if you don't want to hear about this, because I'm not going to do spoiler alerts, it's all going to be spoiler. This is just me giving my theory. If you've read this already, then you can listen and be like, no, Ryan, that's not how I took it. If you haven't read this, I liked it. I think this is not a spoiler. This is pre-spoiler. Basically, the entire time I was reading this, I was like, what the hell is going on? And then I had some theories, which I sent on Instagram to Caroline, who recommended it, and I was really far off every time. I was so far off. About every 100 pages, my theory changed. It's a really weird setup. The book is probably the second strangest or strangest kind of formatting. Like, look, this is... Oh, I almost fell. It's like backwards in some parts. There's areas crossed out. There are pages that really don't have a whole lot on them. Like, there's some other colors. There are pictures, and it's basically done like somebody's research. It's like a multiple people have edited or researched this and added onto it, and it's supposed to feel that way. So at this point, if you haven't read it and you think you're going to, I don't know why I'm so hot. I should turn on the fan. If you think you're going to read it, I would not watch anymore. Just turn it off here. I think you've watched long enough that I get credit for a view. Which is really all I care about is just views. Because I keep going down. But now maybe that my mom is a subscriber, they'll go up. I don't know. Alright, so here's my theory. I think I need my phone to remember what my theory is. So I brought this up to somebody. I had already mentioned this. Essentially what happens in this, as a reminder if you've already read it, or if you haven't read it and you don't care. It's a guy named Johnny Truant. Johnny Truant happens upon an old man who lives in his buddy's apartment building. The old man kind of does this pretty regular routine, and at some point he dies, and the main character, the main person in this, or kind of the narrator, I guess, Johnny, joins his buddy Lude, who lives in the building, and they get into the guy's house, and they find a trunk full of stuff. And Johnny takes that stuff, and he just goes through it. Now, the old guy that died had really no background. Nobody knew if he had any relatives. There's really nothing about him. So all of his stuff was going to Goodwill or some equivalent of Goodwill. And Johnny took this trunk. He starts going through it, and he realizes that there's this entire work that this old man, who I don't know how to say his name, so I'm just going to call him Z. That Z was working on, Zampano, that he was working on, and Johnny kind of tries to recreate it. And what Zampano had been working on was basically analyzing a video, a movie, a film that was created. It's basically like a documentary about a house that had a door suddenly appear, and in that door there was a long hallway that was completely black, and it would change shapes and it would change lengths, and it basically follows people from the house as they go in to figure out what's going on. Now the it's like a different dimension. The hallway is thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of miles long. You don't ever get a feel for how many rooms there are because it just continuously changes, and it's not. It doesn't physically. It could not occur right in the house because it's just a regular house. And they go in and they film it, and the guy who's filming it, David Navidson, he is a Pulitzer Prize winning photojournalist, and he's trying to document what happens. And some people die, and that changes their whole lives. And that's in the 90s. It's 1990, I think. So most of what we're watching or what we're reading is Johnny's kind of collection, his footnotes added on to the Navidson report is what they called it. And he's basically has kind of like a running commentary of what Z was doing and what Z's analysis of the movie was. And he's adding his own stuff. So that's where you kind of are with it. And I thought, well, maybe they're aliens, which I think I'm supposed to think, or maybe it's hell, or maybe it is a Minotaur, and this is some kind of modern version of a Greek or Roman story. But it kind of gets a little different than that, because that's where you go with it, right? That's kind of like the path you go down. You're like, maybe this is real. Even though no one can find the documentary video, no one can find any evidence that the stuff that Zampano wrote about ever happened. They can't find the house. They can't find an address. They can't find any of the people that were involved. They can't find the movie that apparently everyone had seen and written books about. So, and there's all these footnotes. And the footnotes go to different works that basically also analyze this pop culture phenomenon, the Navidson report. Now, Johnny's dad died when he was a kid, and Johnny's mom kind of lost it. And you don't really know a whole lot about that. But you know that Johnny going down this path about the book and about the film is driving him crazy too. And you don't know how crazy. So, at the end of it, there's additional stuff that was added by an editor into the book, including a number of letters between Johnny and his mother from the 1985 to 1989. Now, she was committed to an institution because she tried to choke Johnny and kill him after he was burned, and his dad walked in and grabbed her and basically committed her. And from the letters, you kind of see this descent into madness for her. I mean, she's doing well at one point. She wants to see her son. She's exchanging emails. That's not true. Exchanging letters back and forth with her son. And then she starts getting more and more paranoid. And, has a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and she's paranoid about the workers and the director of the institution that she's in, And then at some point she gets better again, and she apologizes for how she had been acting, and she's on a different medical regimen or medicine. She's on different medicine, and then she kind of takes another downward slide, and then she dies. She hangs herself um, with the bed sheets, and there's this story before we get to those final letters, and the story is about this mother, and I don't know what the story's from. Like I can't tell if it's just somebody recounting a story they had heard. I don't. It's not about Johnny or characters in the book, um, but it basically talks about this woman had a baby, and the baby had holes in its brain, and the baby wasn't going to survive. And the medical personnel at the hospital were aware of that. I mean, they knew it was a high risk birth, but when the baby was born, there was just a very narrow chance the baby was going to survive, and they were pretty sure it was not going to survive, and it was in the ICU or the NICU, and they were trying to do what they could, but they wanted to be realistic with the mother, and the mother um, stayed with the baby for days and just talked to the baby and almost went to a trance and was saying things to the baby, and there was some positive response. I don't think much, but some positive response. And the medical professionals started believing, like, hey, this might be a miracle. Like, she's doing something. There's something going on here, and it's having a positive effect. And they thought, like, this could be amazing. I can't believe that she's actually gonna save this baby. This baby has a chance. The baby didn't really have a chance. So at some point, the mother basically says, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready for you to, pull the plug, switch off the life support, and allow the baby to die. And then and the medical staff was amazed because they were like, wait, but there's this miracle. You've been talking to your baby for days. It seemed like you were really trying to work something up, and now we started to believe, and reality kind of hits them back in the face, and they're like, okay. And she goes to the baby and kisses the baby's head and says, you can go now, and the baby dies. Which is a little rough for parents, I think, to read, but I think when I read that, it was before you found out about Johnny's mother. And the kind of the lesson I took away from that was even reasonable people, even professionals in certain areas, can be convinced of something. And when they're convinced of that thing, they go down a path where they believe that anything can happen. And even though their professional status should challenge that because they know better, they've kind of convinced themselves. They've allowed themselves to be convinced. And I kind of felt that's how I was for the book. I was convinced. I mean, early on I was like, what the hell's going on? And then I was convinced that this must be something based off of extraterrestrial work, or it might be some kind of religious angle to it. There are so many things it could have been. You start thinking like, oh, maybe. I mean, not that I believe that the book was real. It's fake. It's fiction. But you kind of think, well, maybe this is going somewhere, and it doesn't, because we should know better than that. There's no interdimensional house made out of material that's older than the world and older than the solar system, maybe older than the galaxy, that changes shape and eats people. Like, that's a fun book, but as reasonable, sane people, which I think we are, I hope, we should know better. And it kind of goes back to those doctors. The doctors should have known better than to believe that something was going to happen to this child that they were sure wouldn't. They allowed themselves to be convinced, and I think I allowed myself to be convinced that something else was going to happen in this book. Essentially what I think, in the end, is Johnny Truant's, and we don't know his real last name, Johnny Truant's mother was a schizophrenic, and I think Johnny was schizophrenic too, and I think it didn't really manifest it. His schizophrenia didn't manifest itself until his early adult years, which is pretty typical, and since schizophrenia can be genetic, it would make sense for, if his mother had it, a good chance that he would have it too. And he really started exhibiting signs in his early adult, like 18 20, 22, 25. So I really think like where the whole book was kind of this lead up where you thought it was going to be this kind of crazy magical extraterrestrial religious experience, it's really a schizophrenic guy who made up this entire book, including reviewing somebody else's movie or somebody else's review of a movie that doesn't exist. So much of what happened in the book earlier that you think is about Zampano or about Johnny reviewing it actually has references in his mother's letters that his mother wrote when he was a child and when he was growing up. So there's things that he could take away from those letters and then use in the story, and that kind of makes sense because he's drawing from what he knows. It talks about his mother, having issues and then getting a little bit better with medication and then having issues. And Johnny was kind of self-medicated, and I wouldn't be surprised if he wrote the original draft, if there was more than one draft, and then didn't remember doing all that work, and then wrote on top of that, as if he was somebody else, or if he was writing after somebody else wrote. So, where it seems like there's this big, creepy, crazy thing going on, it really is, I think, Johnny being schizophrenic and really starting down a path that his mother kind of started out. So his mother died in 1989. This book starts in 1990, and it goes until he starts reviewing old letters from his mother. So I liked it. I thought that was a nice twist because there are plenty of books where you're going to have crazy supernatural stuff happen, and I don't think that's what this was. This was us as readers being convinced of one thing and then finding out the simple explanation was the correct one, and the most realistic explanation was the correct one. So, which, while it's still creepy, just because of the way it was all set up, maybe is more powerful because you're thinking, how can I be convinced of something that is clearly fake? It is fiction. I mean, it's fiction when you buy it. It's from 2000. But if you pick this up and you didn't know that, I think you could go down that path. You could think it's one thing and then at the end realize you've been confused the entire time. So I recommend it. I enjoyed it. It took me a long time to read. Some of it's really packed, and then there's 50 pages of blank pages. So that really increased my reading rate quite a bit when I got to these pages, because I can read 5 words pretty quickly on a page. That's it. That's all I have today. I will do something a little more traditional. You got the book haul. You got a little kid's book in 2 different languages. And then you got my first pseudo review of a book that I enjoyed, and the first book that I've reviewed since joining BookTube. So thanks for joining me. I hope you will come back, and I hope to be able to edit these videos soon. I don't know how to do it. I thought I was going to be able to do it for the last video, but apparently I have too much on my computer, so I need to delete some stuff before it'll let me edit it. But thanks for coming back, and if you have not subscribed, please subscribe and let me know what you think. And if you've read House of Leaves, let me know what you're thinking with what you thought after you read it, and I'd love to hear what you think of what I thought. And I hope you think I'm right and you want to be my friend and you think it was really insightful. But if you don't, that's cool too. And we can still be friends. So if you haven't read this, read it. If you haven't read any of the books I've bought, feel free to read them, but don't tell me what happens because I haven't read them and I'm a really slow reader. So I am going to be reading, and it's not down here, I'm going to be reading a book about game theory. I have, I think 175 more pages in it. It's really dry. I'm going to get through it, and then I'll have some more interesting stuff to read after that. This is a game theory book from 1983, and it may help me do online games with my friends from college, but I think it's a little dated. So, thanks again. I will talk to you, or I will see you in the future.